I said I was going to do this video about a week ago, and I haven't done it. So I'm going to do it now. I'm going to talk about Tom Seaver's career through his playing years in Major League Baseball from 1967 to 1986. Had a long career. But first, that his journey to the foyer into Major League Baseball started off in 1965 as he was drafted as a sophomore out of USC by the Los Angeles Dodgers in the 10th round. He asked the Dodgers for $70,000 for his salary. Dodgers refused. They ain't gonna pay him. Rookie, had no idea what they were gonna get, just refused. So, 1966 rolls around. Seaver is drafted by the Braves in the first round of the secondary draft, which happened in January. Which I had no idea there was a secondary draft. So I would say you could call the original or the first draft the primary draft. But that's really interesting. Drafted 20th overall. He didn't play for the Braves, so he was going to go back to USC. Problem was, USC played 2 exhibition games, and that's why the Braves didn't take him. So he's going to go back to college, but the NCAA wouldn't take him because he signed an MLB contract with the Braves. So Seaver's dad was talking to the commissioner of baseball, who was Eckhart at the time. He was going to take him to court. He was going to file a lawsuit for the unfairness of what was going on with his kid, and Eckhart gave. He said any team could match the Braves' offer for Tom Seaver. 3 teams matched that offer. The Philadelphia Phillies, the Cleveland Indians, and the New York Mets all matched it. So they had a lottery to decide what out of the 3 teams was going to get this young kid named Tom Seaver. And the team that won him, of course, was the New York Mets. So, his first year in the league, 1967, he went 16-3, had a 2.76 ERA, 34 games started, 18 complete games. More than half of his games started was a complete game. He pitched 251 innings with 170 strikeouts. He was Rookie of the Year for the last place New York Mets. At this point, the Mets in this time were the lovable losers. They were not good whatsoever. Nothing could ever go right. But everybody loved them. They were the lovable losers. 1968 rolls around. Seaver continues to develop. 16-12. Had 1 less loss than the previous year. 2.2 ERA. 35 games started with 14 complete games. 278 innings pitched with 205 strikeouts. Now, there's a lot of... I'm just going to talk about this now. There's a lot of stats I could have went into. Home runs given up and all that. ERA plus. But I just want to keep it as simple as I can. And I'm talking about the game started because Seaver and a lot of pitchers at this time were workhorses. They started every game that they played in, most of them. They rarely ever missed a game, and they pitched a lot of innings. So that's why I picked these stats, and for pitchers, I probably will use these. But he pitched 278 innings with 205 strikeouts. He was runner-up for MVP in his sophomore year. He lost out to Willie McCovey of the San Francisco Giants. But he lost the most valuable player, but he did win Cy Young. And his best game most probably was his game against the Cubs, where he lost a perfect game in the 9th inning with 1 out to the Cubs. 1969, his breakout year. 25-7, 2.21 ERA, and 35 games started, same as last year. 18 complete games. Absolute stud. Tom Seaver looks absolutely great. 273 and a third inning pitched with 200 strikeouts. That year, the Mets beat, I believe it was the Orioles. If I'm not mistaken, it was the Orioles. in the World Series. And also, he was the winner of the Hickok belt, which is the top pro athlete, I would assume in all sports, and Sports Illustrated Sportsman of the Year. And like I said, that was the year where the Mets were christened the Miracle Mets. They had Jerry Koosman, Nolan Ryan, Seaver. Pitching staff was really good, and they had timely hitting. I think Cleon Jones was on that team. I think Gil Hodges was as well, I think. 1970, the year after they won the World Series. 18-12 win-loss record with a 2.82 ERA. 36 games started, most in his career so far, his short 4 years. 290 and 2/3 innings pitched with 283 strikeouts. On April 22nd, he tied Steve Carlton with 19 strikeouts in a game, which at that point was the record. It was him and Carlton at the top. And he also struck out 10 in a row throughout the game, and that was against the Padres on April 22nd. 1971, Seaver went 20-10 with a 1.76 ERA. 35 games started, 286.1 innings pitched, and 289 strikeouts. Absolutely great. Probably his best year in most stats compared to 1969. But he led the league in ERA and strikeouts when you got 289 strikeouts and a 1.76 ERA, you would imagine you would lead the league in those stats, considering they raised the mound up. No, they lowered the mound, if I'm not mistaken, because 1968, the year of the pitcher. He was second in Cy Young voting to Fergie Jenkins of the Cubs. The reason Fergie won was he had more innings and a better win-loss record. 1972, Seaver went 21-12 with a 2.92 ERA, 35 games started, 262 innings pitched, 249 strikeouts. Now at this point, and for the next 5 years, dude's a workhorse. Seaver's taking the bum every day. He's going mostly all 9 innings, it seems like, and just dominant. This is like the prime of his career. 1973, he went 19-10 with a 2.08 ERA, 36 games started, 290 innings pitched, 251 strikeouts, and he won his second Cy Young that year. 1974, 11-11, so he's not looking so hot. 3.2 ERA, 32 games started, 236 innings pitched, 201 strikeouts. So most of everything in his stats took a nosedive. But in 1975, he bounced back. 22-9 with a 2.38 ERA, 36 games started, and 280 and a third innings pitched, 243 strikeouts, and third Cy Young. Second Cy Young in 3 years. 1976, he was 14-11, 2.59 ERA, 34 games started with a 271 innings pitched, and 235 strikeouts. So he took a little bit of a dive from 75 to 76, at least in his win-loss record. He started 2 less games. He did only pitch 9 less innings, and he had less strikeouts. 1977, this is when him and the Mets start to fall out. He wanted to renegotiate his contract. M. Donald Grant, who had, at this point, from the general manager, was bestowed, he could do whatever he wanted. So with Seaver wanting to renegotiate his contract, Grant said no, he wasn't going to budge. Dick Young, who worked for, I believe, the New York Daily Post at the time, wrote an article saying essentially he was being dared by his wife for more money because she was envy of Nolan Ryan's contract. And when Seaver heard that, who was in negotiations with the general manager to get a new contract, when he heard that article written, and published, he wanted out. He didn't want to stay in New York anymore. And at this point, I don't blame him. But if you're the Mets, how are you not? Tom Seaver got you your first World Series. Your first World Series in 1969. He's your star pitcher. Nolan Ryan's gone. I'm sure. I think at this point, Jerry Koosman's gone. Seaver's your lone starting pitcher out of those three that was there in '69, and he's your ace. He's the best pitcher you've probably ever had, and you let him go. You trade him away. Why do you not fire Grant, who is the mastermind behind all of this, essentially? But in June 15th, 1977, which was christened the Midnight Massacre, Dave Kingman was also traded on that night to, I believe, the Cubs. They traded Tom Seaver to the Cincinnati Reds for pitcher Pat Zachary, minor league outfielder Steve Henderson, infielder Doug Flynn, and minor league outfielder Dan Norman. Reds won that trade. There is no doubt about it. Reds easily won that trade. Easily. There's no way you could maybe even argue that the Mets even got what they should have out of Tom Seaver. But for the entire his season total for 1977, he had a 21-6 record, 2.58 ERA, 33 games started, 261 and a third innings pitched, and 196 strikeouts. The 196 strikeouts was his lowest in his career so far. 1978, he had a pretty good year, his first full year with the Reds. 16-14 record, 2.88 ERA, 36 games started and he pitched 259 and 2/3 of an inning with 226 strikeouts. So he's bounced back a little bit. And at least in his games started, he pitched a couple innings less, and his strikeout numbers went up. And this is the year that he threw a no-hitter against the Cardinals on June 16th, 1978. Almost a year after he got traded, a year and a day later from when he got traded to the Reds. He threw a no-hitter against Lou Brock's Cardinals at that point. 1979 for Seaver and the Reds, 16-6 with a 3.14 ERA, or 3.14 ERA, my bad. 32 games started, 215 innings pitched, 131 strikeouts. 1980, he went 10-8 with a 3.67 ERA, 26 games started, 168 innings, 101 strikeouts. At this point, Seaver's getting older. How much does he have left in him, most likely, at this point? 1981, he put any of those rumors, he squashed any of them. 14-2 with a 2.54 ERA, 23 games started, so he didn't start many games. 166.1 innings pitched with 87 strikeouts. That might be 187. I think that's a typo. I lost my track. He was runner-up for Cy Young, and that was the year Fernando Mania took over. Fernando Valenzuela won Cy Young that year. And he struck out Keith Hernandez of St. Louis for his 3,000th strikeout in 1981. 1982, had a really Seaver... No, that was 87 strikeouts. 1982, he had a very un-Seaver-like year. 5-13 with a 5.5 ERA and 21 games started. Only pitched 111.1 innings, and he struck out 62. So that very un-Seaver-like, because he pitches a lot of innings. He's usually never really hurt, and he's dominant. And this is when he's starting. He's been in the league 15 plus years. He's starting to slow down. 1983, he was traded back to the Mets for Charlie Puleo, I think is how you say his name, Lloyd McClendon, I did not know was a player. And Jason Felice, don't know how to say his name, but hopefully one of those two ways is right. And he tied Walter Johnson, the Big Train, his record for opening day starts at 14. But Seaver's totals for 1983, he was 9-14, the 3.55 ERA, 34 games started, 231 innings pitched, with 135 strikeouts. So going back to the Mets, this feel-good story. At this point, the Mets finally realized the error of their ways, and they fired Grant, and they fired, I believe, the manager of the team at the time, who I don't remember his name. So, righting the wrong of trading Seaver. But Seaver's at the end of his career at this point. 1984, the White Sox claimed Seaver from a free agent compensation draft. The thought process of how the White Sox was even able to acquire Tom Seaver was the Mets thought he wouldn't be picked up. He's a 39-year-old pitcher. He had a decently high contract considering, I think it was, $700,000 to $1 million, which just shows how different free agency was in the 80s, or late 70s, early 80s, and how it evolved into today when players are making, star players, $200 million a year, or not a year, $200 million over the lifetime of the contract. But no, they unprotected him, and that's why he was able to get picked up from the White Sox. One stat that happened in that year when he was with the White Sox was he won 2 games on the same day against the Brewers. He started one of them, and he got the win in a relief appearance, which I thought was kind of nifty to talk about, so I put it down. But his stat line for 84 through the 2 teams, the Mets and the White Sox, was 15-11 with a 3.95 ERA, 33 games started, 236.2 innings pitched, with 131 strikeouts. So his strikeout numbers went down a little bit. He's still eating up a lot of innings at this point, and Seaver's still low ERA guy, about average, with a 3.95, about average, but still eats up a lot of innings, still a good quality pitcher, even at 39. 1985, he went 16-11, a 3.17 ERA, 33 games started, 238.2 innings pitched, 134 strikeouts. So, like I said in the previous one, he's eaten a lot of innings. This dude's a workhorse. He acquired his 300th victory at Yankee Stadium, on the old Yankee Stadium, on August 4th, 1985. In a complete game, he beat the Yankees 4-1. And then in 1986, he started opening day for the White Sox, if I'm not mistaken, for the 16th time in his career. And then the White Sox traded Tom Seaver to the Boston Red Sox for Steve Lyons, which, with that trade, Seaver's older. Maybe this is his best shot at a World Series win, another one. So, I mean, I think it's a good move from both teams, considering especially what Seaver did, mentoring probably young Roger Clemens, which immensely helped. But Seaver ended up having a knee injury, which held him back from playing the playoffs. But he had, when they were doing the introductions for Game 1 of the World Series between the Mets, funny how that comes full circle, he had the loudest cheering reception when they were introducing the teams in the lineups. But after 1986, he retired. Just couldn't do it anymore, really. I mean, he's 41 at this point. He's pitched 20 years. And just at the end of his career in 1986, going into 87, this is a Hall of Fame guy. There's no doubt about it. It's just what's the percentage that he's going to bet. that he's going to fetch from the writers that are going to elect him in. But before I get to that, because I think it's 5 to 7 years for the induction, he had his number retired by the Mets in 1988, which that was a quick turnaround. It was 2 years later they're like, all right, easily most likely the best player we've ever had in our franchise. That's why he's called the franchise, as well as that's why he's called the franchise as well as Tom Terrific. So 2 years, got the number in already, number 41. He had the highest Hall of Fame ballot voting percentage at 98.84. That has now been surpassed by the likes of Ken Griffey Jr., Mariano Rivera, and if I'm not mistaken, Derek Jeter. If I'm not mistaken. There were 5 writers that had no's on their answer, and I'm putting that in quotation marks, because 3 of them abstained from voting at all, because Pete Rose was not on the ballot. Pete Rose wasn't going to get on the ballot for these 3 people. What's the point of even voting? 1 no was a writer who was recovering from open heart surgery and didn't see his name. Wow. I had to, when I saw this, and I was like, all right, and they went into detail of how these people didn't vote for Tom Seaver. I had to include this. One guy had open heart surgery and he didn't see his name and he was recovering from it now. Wow. And then probably if you want to call any of these dumb, the last no was from a writer who never marked anybody in their first year of eligibility. Which, why? Why would you not mark anybody eligible in their first year? Because what's the point of doing that when you could, hold on. What's the point of not marking them eligible when you know they're most likely a Hall of Famer if you're going to do it the next year? What's the point? But Tom Seaver he's in the Hall of Fame, first year eligible, with a 98.84 percentage. I wanted to wrap that up again. Wanted to say that again. So that's outstanding. Seaver's in the Mets Hall of Fame, the Reds Hall of Fame, and the Marine Corps Sports Hall of Fame. Which, that's interesting. I didn't know the Marine Corps had a Sports Hall of Fame. But that was kind of interesting. Tom Seaver and Walter Johnson are the only pitchers in the history of the sport that have 300 wins, 3,000 strikeouts, and under 3 ERA, which just shows you how dominant Seaver was for 20 years throughout his pitching career, which just shows you how great he was, and he ate a lot of innings too. So, and he pitched a lot of complete games. I think it was almost 200 complete games he pitched. He pitched, I think, like 18, or during like his prime, he pitched, I think, average 18 a season, 16 a season, which you will never see anything like that anymore, at least in this baseball generation. In the way the sport is now, there's no way that's happening. We're lucky if we see 7, 6. It's just it's a bygone era. And Tom Seaver also had 3 Cy Youngs to his name in 1968, his sophomore year, 1973 and 75. And, I mean, he was dominant for 15 years, 14 years. And even when he was 40, he went 16 and 11 with a 3.17 ERA in his second to last year. I mean, the dude was great. Absolutely great. And it's a shame that what has happened. And I don't know what else to say, really. other than I never got to saw him play. I remember my dad telling me about him. That the pitchers that my dad always told me about was Bob Gibson, Steve Carlton, and Tom Seaver. Those were really the three pitchers I remember him talking to me about. And they were all dominant, they were all great, and they were all Hall of Famers. And I could say that I wish I could watch them play and actually like be at the game and not watch. I mean, I have the whole world internet on my hands. I could look up the games. I could find the games and watch them. But I don't think that's the same feeling as watching them while they were playing. That's really it. I just wanted to talk about Tom Seaver as the player, as the person. You've never heard really anything bad about Tom Seaver. Nothing really. And just what a career. One of the best pitchers to ever step on the mound. And one of the top 100 players in baseball history, probably. You could make that case. But that's the end of the video. If you guys liked it, press the like button, subscribe down below. That'd be greatly appreciated. And I'll see you guys most likely tomorrow.